Not that long ago, we analyzed the great profits seen by livestock producers. 2014 was the best year ever for hog producers. Those in the cattle industry were looking at tax options after strong margins. But those two markets entered a different world in 2015. At the Goodmanson Ranch in August, we talked with Nebraska Extension educator Berger about marketing the 2014 calf crop, one that could have set records. We met with Aaron this week to talk about developing a marketing plan for this year. We also discussed the dangers of grass tetany as producers approach the grazing season. Our interview took place on UNO's campus, where Nebraska Extension was holding a two-day conference. We began by talking about the current market environment for this year's calves.
Yeah, so we've certainly seen a change from where we were prior to Christmas, and seen a significant drop both in fat cattle and feeder cattle. Both of those have come back some, and I think really thinking about from a cow-calf standpoint, if you sold your calves this fall, you got prices that you never dreamed you would get before. And so I think it's important to think about marketing these calves that are being born now and having a plan in place and thinking about what are you going to do to try to take advantage of where prices are looking forward to the spring, summer, and into the fall. And so thinking about your options, whether that's looking at a forward contract with somebody, looking at futures and options as a potential, something like livestock risk protection insurance, evaluating your options and then putting that in writing, committing yourself to that, and hopefully providing some protection on the downside in this market scenario.
For farmers and ranchers that aren't maybe used to those types of tools, are they difficult to use, and how able are they to quickly learn them?
Yeah, so I think it really depends on what you're comfortable with too, and it also depends on your personality. Something like a futures or options, you really probably better find a broker who understands that, and you can communicate to them your goals, what you want to do. They can tell you what would work for you. Something like a livestock risk protection insurance, a little bit of education there really can help you do that. It's basically like an insurance policy. You can set the floor but leave the upside open. That's something you really can do on your own. Again, working with a insurance agent who sells the product, but you need to be an informed consumer as you think about using that tool.
As you determine your break-even costs, what are some things that go into determining what's going to actually cost you to produce that calf?
Yeah, so we finished 2014, and so your cost for 2014 already, hopefully. You can put those in the books, go back and look at those, then look at where you're at in terms of your projections for this year. Our harvested feed costs have certainly come down. Things like pasture rates have gone up. And so just going through that, understanding where you're at in terms of costs. Inputs from a fuel standpoint have gone down. Maybe you've made some equipment purchases or things like that, that might go up. But that really helps us looking back to know where we're going to be for this future year.
Is there a difference in calves? Is there going to be more value this year towards the heifer as people think about rebuilding, or try to at least?
Yeah, I really think we're going to see what happens, but I think the spread between heifers and steers is going to be tighter than oftentimes it is, just because where we're at in this cattle cycle and the desire to rebuild the cow herd. And so if you can package heifers into an attractive group that's bangs vaccinated, ready to breed, even into next fall, I think there's going to be a real good demand for those kind of females to go back into production.
Is there anything you can do to add value if you are going to keep them back? You're not going to sell them, you're just going to keep them on your operation?
Yeah, I think if you're thinking about backgrounding, I think you want to think about these process verified programs that can somehow differentiate yourself from just a commodity type environment. If you can think about maybe where you can partner with someone else, whether a feed yard or someone like that, because we're in a short supply, there's people looking for opportunities to make those connections and maybe capture some additional value there.
As you look towards the grazing season in your area, Scottsbluff, what do the grasses look like out there?
We got good subsoil moisture, but the recent change into warmer temperatures and dry already have some grass fires, and so the top's going to dry out. We definitely need some moisture here in the next 2 months. March, April are really critical for us for our cool season grasses, and so we have time yet, but we're sure keeping our eye on what's happening here.
Why is grass tetany something we should be worried about as we approach grazing season?
Yeah, so at this time of the year, we're thinking about the warm weather we've had. Grasses are starting to green up. And grass tetany is really something that impacts primarily lactating cows the most. And so if we can do some things now from a preparation standpoint, if we're going to be grazing cool season grasses or cool season annuals like wheat or rye, feeding a high mag mineral now, making sure those cows are balanced in that prior to that, using that feed can really help us reduce the incidence of grass tetany. So it's really true that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure in that kind of scenario.
Are there things that people can look for to see if there are signs of it?
So really it's a forage issue, thinking about what's in the forage. High potassium combined with low calcium and then shortage of magnesium is what triggers this event. And it really can vary also on weather. And so cool, cloudy conditions seem to trigger that. Real high protein in the forage. So if you think about real lush, immature forage, that helps trigger that type of event. So by preparing ahead of time these animals, basically having them in a state prior to and when they're grazing on a high mag mineral, probably the best thing we can do to prevent that from happening.
How does it affect the animal?
So when it affects the animals, basically it's happening at a cell level where they have a shortage of calcium and a shortage of magnesium. Animal will convulse or have tremors, act staggering, and then it results in the animal shutting down if you're not treating it quickly.
On the Market Journal homepage, we'll link to more information on developing a marketing plan and the dangers of grass tetany.